Hello and welcome to part 36 of my video series on how to use Blender 2.6. In this video we'll be creating a Minecraft character like this one. Alright, so we'll be creating this Minecraft character from this single default cube. So let's go ahead and press 1 to go to the front view, and then press 5 to go to orthographic view, so we're looking at the cube straight on. Now we're going to be modeling this character entirely from this default cube, and then we'll be adding bones, and then we'll be adding and creating a texture in GIMP and applying that texture to the model in Blender. So this video is really going to be in 3 parts. To start off part 1, let's go ahead and create the character. With the cube selected, we're going to go into edit mode with the tab key, of course. Now this default cube will be the head of the character, so let's go ahead and create a second cube. So inside of edit mode, we're going to press Shift A and add a new cube. Now it added a new cube, but it made it in the exact same spot, and it's the exact same size as the original cube. This is kind of a dangerous point to be in, because if we leave this cube or we deselect the new cube, we actually will have 2 cubes in the exact same spot. That means there will be 2 vertexes wherever you see 1 vertex, and that's a bad thing. So let's go ahead and drag this blue arrow straight down from the front view so that we can isolate the second cube, and this second cube will be the character's body. So I'm going to go to the side view with the 3 key on my number pad, and then I'll press S, and we're going to make the body a little bit narrower. This is the character's front, this is the character's back, because we're looking at the character from the right. And so maybe that will be about an appropriate width for the character from front to back. Let's go back to the front view and press S to scale, but now we only want to make the character wider. So let's go ahead and press X to constrain the scale to left and right on the x-axis, and we'll make the body about the same width as the head. I must admit that I don't actually play Minecraft, but I have a few references in front of me, so I'm going off of those reference shots from Minecraft. Let's go ahead and switch to face select mode down there on the header, of course. Grab the bottom face of the body, and we're going to drag that down to make the body a little bit longer. And let's go ahead and add some arms. So we'll move our 3D cursor by left clicking, of course, to right about there, and let's press Shift A and add a new cube. Of course, we're still in edit mode. We're going to create all the body parts within edit mode of this cube so that the entire body is one mesh. Let's go ahead and go to the side view and press S to scale down that entire arm so that it's about the same width as the body. We're just kind of eyeballing it here. We're not doing anything very precise, and that's okay because it's Minecraft. Let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit. Let's get this a little bit closer into the body, not overlapping into the body, but pretty close to it. And still with face select mode, we'll grab the bottom of that arm cube and we'll just pull it down. The arms are a little bit, as far as I can tell, longer than the actual body, so that's why we went a little bit farther down. And now we want to duplicate this arm. There's a couple ways that we could select this entire arm to duplicate it, but the easiest way is to just put your mouse over it and press L, and that will select that entire island. Now what we should really do is press A first, and A a few times so we know we have nothing selected, and then put your mouse over the arm and press L. Sometimes you have to move your mouse around, put it near to an edge for that to work, but the L key should select whatever sub-object island kind of a thing you have you want to select. So let's go ahead and duplicate this, Shift D, and then we'll constrain it to the x-axis, the new arm, and we'll move it over to the other side. Let's zoom in a little bit, and let's move it a little bit closer to the body. There we go. Let's go ahead and duplicate the arm, Shift D of course to duplicate, and we'll move it down so that its edge is pretty close to the edge of the bottom of the left or right side of the character. Let's go ahead and grab this inside face, and we're going to move it so that it's not going past halfway. So in other words, because the character is lined up left and right, it's exactly on the center line. We know that we don't want to cross that blue line when we make the leg. So now it's a little bit narrower. Let's go ahead and grab the bottom of the leg. It's a little bit longer than the arm, so we'll drag that down. Remember that there is a foot at the bottom of the leg. It's a little gray foot with blue pants. And so that should do it. And because we do actually want the leg to bend, we'll be doing that with bones, we do need to create a few edge loops going around the leg. So let's go ahead and press Control R. Of course, we're still in edit mode. And when you press Control R, you get this loop cut. Let me just press Escape and show you from a different angle if you're not familiar. Press Control R, and then when you move your mouse around, especially over different edges, it will give you an option to make a cut in your mesh wherever that pink line is. So you actually can slide it once you decide which edge loop to create. So I'm going to put my 3D cursor over the edge of one of the legs, or the leg, and click, and now I have the option to slide the joint up and down. I'm actually going to press Escape and then undo, because I'm going to do this from my front view. I'll press Control R and then put my mouse over the edge there so we know it's going to go across the leg. And now I'm going to put the knee a little bit higher than center. If I wanted it to be in the center, I would just right click, but I want it to be a little bit higher because the foot is up until about that point right there. So let's just call the knee right about there. And now we're going to create one more edge loop above the knee and below the knee so the leg bends nicely. So again, Control R and then click and then move your mouse down to right about there. Same thing below, Control R, click, and then move your mouse and then click to the side. Okay, let's go ahead and duplicate this leg so we can put our mouse over the leg and press L. In fact, we should press A a few times to make sure we have nothing selected, and then press L and Shift D and then X. And let's zoom in a little bit so we can see exactly what we're doing. And that should be about it. So that's the end of part 1. On to part 2. Well, the part 1 was, of course, modeling the Minecraft character. Part 2 will be creating bones, so let's get started with that. The character is really big, and he's also below kind of this ground grid. So let's go ahead and scale him down. I'm going to press S to scale. And you can think of every one of these squares, especially on the ground grid, as 1 meter by 1 meter. Excuse me. So I'm going to scale the character down so that he's a little bit less than 2 meters tall. That looks good to me. We're going to keep him center left and right, so remember to only grab the blue arrow when moving him up. So he's still exactly 0 on the x-axis. Let's go ahead and press Shift C to put our 3D cursor back in the middle, and we'll press Shift A, and we're going to add a armature, a single bone. Now the single bone, the armature, we need to make it see-through, or at least be able to see it through the bones. So we go to the Object Data tab with the bone selected. The Object Data tab, when you have bone selected, looks like a little person. And you want to change the display type. You want to change it to X-ray so you can see the bone through the character. And we're going to go and, with the armature bone still selected, we're going to go to the Object tab and change the display type from textured, or it could be solid. Not sure why it's textured, but we want to change it to wire so we can see it as a wire as opposed to a gray solid object. And this is going to be the body bone. So in fact, I'm going to press Z with my mouse in the 3D view window, and so now I can see where the base of the body is. Let's go into edit mode by pressing tab, of course, and grab the tail of that bone and move it down to the base or the top of the body. Let's zoom in and get this a little bit more accurate to right about there. Sure. And with this tail still selected, we'll press E and then Z or Z. And there we go. And let's create some arms. So I'll put my mouse, my 3D cursor right about there, at the top of the arm approximately. Not at the very top, but somewhere along where the joint would be, but in the middle of the arm. And Shift A. And because we're in edit mode of the armature, when we press Shift A, it doesn't come up with a menu, it just adds a new bone because it can't add anything else but a bone. We need to make sure that from the side view that the bone is in the middle of the arm, which it is because I didn't move my 3D cursor forward or backwards, so that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and duplicate this. We don't want the arm to bend, so we're going to leave it just as one bone. So Shift D to duplicate, then X. And because these blocks are all going to be kind of independently controlled by the bones, we don't need to worry too much about the positions of where they're going to rotate. It doesn't have to be exactly precise about where I put this bone, but we'll make it somewhat eyeball accurate. Let's go ahead and put our 3D cursor at the top middle of one of the legs. Let's go in and make this a little bit more accurate. There we go. And I'll press Shift A to add a new bone, and I'll just grab the tail and pull it straight down with the blue arrow, of course. Don't press G because you could move it front and back, or side to side, so we'll just move it straight down. And now we want to subdivide this bone because we do want the legs to bend. So we do want that automatic weight of the, when we parent the mesh to the bones with automatic weights, we do want the leg to bend nicely and it still be one mesh. So it's not going to be quite as blocky as the rest of the mesh, but I believe in Minecraft the legs do bend, or at least that's what I've seen from other kind of fan art. So to know where the leg is supposed to bend, in other words, we want to divide this bone into two. We need to be able to see where that edge is that we created in the middle of the leg. So I'm actually going to go back and to object mode, so I'll press tab, and then I'll go back in and select the mesh of the character and press tab to go into the meshes edit mode. And now we can see where that line is. Well, we need to keep track of where that line is, so I'm going to just put my 3D cursor exactly where that is. So now the horizontal line on the 3D cursor lines up with where the seam or the middle of the knee exactly is. So I'll go back into object mode with tab, go back and select the armature, press tab to go back into the armatures edit mode, and now with the leg bone selected, I'll press W for specials and subdivide. And now I know that I need to move that joint exactly up where my 3D cursor is. Now I could have put my 3D cursor a little bit more in the middle, but that looks okay to me. We're not going for absolute accuracy here, but it's pretty good. So let's go ahead and duplicate, select the two leg bones and duplicate them, and of course press X to put them, to constrain it to the X side to side, and that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and name our bones. So I'm going to select the bones, go to the bone tab. We're still in edit mode, and I'm going to call this bone head, and we'll call this one body, and this is his left arm, I believe, so we'll call this one arm.L, and this is his right arm. If you were him, that would be your right arm, so arm.R, and this is going to be leg or upper leg dot R, and lower leg dot R, and upper leg dot L, and lower leg dot L. Let's just go ahead and make sure I didn't make any stupid mistakes. Arm dot R dot L, body and head. Looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and save this before we forget. I'm just going to save to my desktop. We're going to call this one Blender underscore MC for Minecraft guy underscore 01. And so now we need to attach the armature to the bones. We're in object mode in both of the objects. So I'm going to select the mesh first, hold shift, select the armature, and then I'll press Control P to make parent. Of course, the last one you select will be the parent, so we selected the mesh first, then the armature, so the armature will be the parent of the mesh. And we're going to say Control P and set parent to armature deform with automatic weights. So we click on with automatic weights, and now the mesh will be attached to the individual bones in the most appropriate way that Blender could figure out. We actually forgot to parent the arms and legs, and I realized that a second ago, to the body. So we're going to go back and select the bones and go into edit mode, and then select the arms, of course by holding shift, and select the upper legs, and then finally select the body and press Control P, and we're going to make the arms and upper legs children of the body, but we're going to keep the offset, which means that the bones won't snap and touch the bone. They'll stay where they are. Keep offset. So now if we go into the armatures pose mode, which of course is where you pose the character and animate the character, we can now grab the body and rotate it, and it will rotate the mesh. we can grab an arm. I'm going to switch to my rotate gizmo, and we can rotate the arm. Now it looks like it's doing a pretty good job. I'll just go back into solid view there. And what I'm fearing is that because automatic weights just does its best job, and doesn't exactly know what we want to accomplish here, that not all the body pieces will move that accurately. By the way, I just pressed R and then Z or Z there, so R and then Z to rotate the head on the Z or Z axis. There we go. Now where it is going to have a problem because of those automatic weights is at the hips here. Now we do want these bones or these legs to act independently from the body, but because it tried to figure out what vertexes in the mesh, if I select the mesh and go into vertex select mode, it had to determine automatically which vertexes got assigned to which bones, and some vertexes might be affected by more than one bone. So well, let's go ahead and see. Let's go ahead and press tab to go out of edit mode. And in pose mode on the armature, if we rotate the leg, you can see that it's really messing up the body. And that's not what we want, obviously. So obviously, this upper leg dot R bone is now affecting some of the vertexes up here, and we don't want that. If we rotate this bottom leg, you can see that it's affecting some of the vertexes in the upper leg. We don't want that. Now there are a couple ways of fixing this. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and press A, and then we're going to clear out any rotation or movement that we did with the armature by pressing Alt R. Alt R clears rotation. In other words, my leg snapped back to its default position. And Alt G clears location, and Alt S clears scale if you scaled your bones at all. So there are a couple ways to fix this problem with the vertexes being assigned to not exactly the right bones that we want. One of these ways is weight painting, and that's a really good way if your mesh is very complicated, if you have a really complicated character mesh. But the other way is to just work with the vertex groups, and that's what we're going to do today. So let's go ahead and go to the front view, and we're going to select the mesh of the character and press tab to go into edit mode. And we are in vertex select mode. That's great. Let's press A a few times to make sure that we have nothing selected. And the way that you can tell which vertexes are assigned to which bone is by going to the Object Data tab when you're in edit mode of the mesh, which is a little triangle here. And there is a section called Vertex Groups. Now when we created the parent-child relationship between the mesh and the armature, it actually created a vertex group for every bone. So you can see here that we have a bunch of vertex groups, and they're named the same as all of our bones. And all of these vertex groups are literally, just groups of vertexes. So if I select the body vertex group from this list and press select, well, that's interesting. You'll see that it's selecting all of the vertexes in the upper leg. Now I'm just going to go ahead and make sure that that bone there is named. Yeah, it is. That's very strange. Okay, so what's happened here is that the automatic weights did not do a very good job with assigning vertexes. Normally, I've done this a few times before. Normally it would do a pretty good job with the body at least, but here if we go back into the meshes edit mode and go and see, I'm going to actually deselect and try that again. We're going to select the body vertex group by clicking on body and pressing select. You'll see that it thinks that these vertexes down here are the ones that are supposed to be assigned to this bone. Now obviously that's wrong. We want the 8 vertexes in the cube, that is the body cube, to be assigned to that bone. So I'm actually going to, with these bones selected, if you don't have them selected, oops, I'm going to press A and then select body and press select. I'm going to remove all of those vertexes from the influence of the body bone. So I'm going to click remove, and now if I press A and then select with body selected, you'll notice that no vertexes are being affected by this body bone anymore because there are no vertexes in the body vertex group. Now we do want all 8 vertexes of the body cube to be affected by this bone, so we're going to add those vertexes to the body vertex group. So with the body vertex group selected, I'm going to put my mouse over the cube of the body and press L. Now again, sometimes it works a little bit strangely. It selected the wrong one and it didn't work the first time. There we go. So sometimes you just have to move your mouse into a different spot and then try L again, and then if it selects the wrong one, press A few times and then try again. So L, there we go, that worked. So with those vertexes selected, with the body vertex group highlighted there, I'm going to press assign. So now those 8 vertexes are assigned to the body group, and that's good. So let's go ahead and press A, and then with body selected, we'll press select. So now we know that for sure that those vertexes are assigned to the body. So let's go ahead and do let's check the head. That one seemed to be okay. I'm going to select head and then press select, and just those 8 vertexes are selected. 4 on the top and 4 on the bottom. A cube has 8 vertexes. Let's go ahead and press A and then select arm.L and select, and that one looks pretty good. I don't see any extra vertexes selected. Let's go ahead and press A and then select the next one. That one looks pretty good. Now I know that we're going to have some problems with the leg, so let's go ahead and select upper leg. We'll press A first and select upper leg.R, and that one is that one right there, and we'll press select, and as you can see, it selects the entire body as well. We don't want it to select the entire body. We're going to actually remove all 8 of those vertexes from the influence of this bone. So let's go ahead and select none, and I'm going to put my mouse over the body and select and press L. Of course I have to do this a few times to make it work. I'm not sure why it doesn't work properly. And it selected the entire body, and so now we're going to, with upper leg.R selected, we're going to press remove, and that will remove any selected vertices from upper leg.R. Also I'll press remove. Now while we have these selected, I'm going to do the same thing with lower leg.R. So I'll select lower leg.R and remove. We actually hadn't checked that one yet, but there's no, I'm going to save time by removing it just in case, and it probably did anyway. So now let's go ahead and select upper leg.R, and it still has a few vertexes that we don't want it to have. It still has this edge loop, these 4 vertexes in its group that we don't want it to have, because we don't want this bone to affect these vertexes at all. So I'll go back to front view. Now in case you don't know how to select an edge loop with vertexes, you just hold Alt and then right click on the edge that forms the edge loop. So I'll just hold Alt and right click on this edge, and it selects all of those vertexes. Of course I am in vertex select mode. And now I can just press remove. And now I'll press A, and of course pressing remove with those 4 selected will remove those vertexes from that group. So now if I press select, it shows us the exact group that we want to have selected. Okay, let's go ahead and do, oops, I'll press A there, and I'm going to do the check the lower leg. So I'll select lower leg.R and press select, and it selects the entire leg, which we don't want. So I'm going to select the ones that we want to remove from the lower leg. So I'm going to highlight and select those 4, and then we're going to have to go in really carefully and select the top 4 on that leg. You can see why I didn't create any extra geometry. I didn't create any extra loops that we didn't need because of this process. And now with those 8 vertexes selected, I'm going to press remove from lower leg.R because we don't want those lower leg.R to be influencing those vertexes. Remove just in case. And so now that looks pretty good. Now you might be asking yourself, or asking your screen right now, why do we have this edge loop being affected by both the upper leg and the lower leg? If I select upper leg.R, you'll notice that it selects that edge loop, but if I select lower leg.R, it also selects that edge loop. So what's actually happening here is both of those bones are sharing those 4 vertexes, and that's fine because we want the leg to bend nicely. We want that these 4 vertexes to be affected equally by these 2 bones, and that's called the weight of the influence. And you can actually assign a vertex at any weight you want, anywhere between 0, which would be no influence, and 1, which is 100% influence. And so right now, what's really happening here is that these 4 vertexes are being affected at 0.5 by the upper leg bone and at 0.5 by the lower leg bone. At least that's what I hope. and so the vertexes will follow both bones if both of them are moved, but if the leg bends, then the leg will bend nicely. So let's go ahead and do the same thing on the left leg. I'm going to go upper leg dot L and select it. Now it selected the entire body as well, so I'm going to press A and then L to select the body. There we go. I find that it works best up if your mouse is right up near the corner of the one of the corners. And then we're going to press remove, and there. So now if I select it, we've solved the body issue. Now I'm just going to select this lower ring and press remove. So now if I select it, only the 12 vertexes that we want are affected by that upper leg bone. Let's go ahead and select the lower leg dot L, and of course it has the extra 8 vertexes that we don't want to affect. So let's go ahead and select Alt right click to get that edge loop, and then zoom in and hold shift of course, and select the four top vertexes, and we'll press remove. So let's go ahead and check this really quickly. Let's go and select the body. That looks good. Let's select the head. I know that one's okay. Arm.L, select. I think the arms are okay too. That looks pretty good to me. Upper leg.R, the legs are where we had the most problems. So upper leg.R, select. That looks pretty good. A lower leg.R, select. That looks pretty good. Upper leg.L, looks good to me. And select lower leg, looks good. Let's go ahead and save this. I'm going to save it, and I'm actually going to make an iteration. So we'll go File, Save As, and right now our file is named _01. We'll press this little plus button, which makes it 02, and then Save as Blender File. So now we have a backup iteration of the file. Alright, so next step, part 3 of this video, is texturing the character. Let's go ahead and make that area a little bit smaller because we need an extra window in here. And that window, of course, is the UV image editor. So I'm going to grab this little shaded area up top and pull it over. So now we have 2 windows instead of 1. I'll press T to get rid of that tool shelf in this window. And we're going to change this window type. So we're going to click this button, and we're going to change it to a UV image editor. This is where we can actually unwrap the mesh of the character and export it to a program like GIMP or Photoshop. Today we'll be using GIMP. So I'm going to press T to get rid of this tool shelf with my mouse in this window, and we need to decide where we're going to unwrap this character. These are all cubes, which makes it really easy for us. So let's go ahead and press Tab with the mesh of the character selected to go into edit mode. And I'm going to press my wheel mouse down, the middle mouse button down, to scroll this header over. So that's the middle mouse button down, just like orbiting. And I'm going to select the edges. So to make the head, we're going to have to figure out which edges to mark as seams to lay the head out flat. So I'm actually going to select all the faces coming off of the head, or the edges coming off of the head. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we'll select 3 of the edges on the back side of the head. So if you can imagine all these kind of laying flat, the head will kind of be, actually what we'll do, why did I select, oh I see, okay. So when the head lies flat on the ground, I'll show you actually. Let's go ahead and mark those as seams though. So I'm going to press Control E to bring up my edge menu, and we'll say mark seam. And we'll do the exact same thing excuse me, with the body and arms and legs. So the arms aren't really too important. It doesn't really matter how you do it. You can select, as long as it lays flat, that is. I might actually just select all the edges here. So I'll select, yeah, I can actually just put my mouse over the arm and press L, and then Control E and mark seam. So that marks all the seams all the edges in that arm. Let's go ahead and select this one with the L key, of course, and Control E and mark seam. We'll be a little bit more careful with the body. So I'm going to select, let's see, we'll actually need to go into wireframe mode so we can see all the edges through the arms. We'll actually select all, like the head, all of the edges running off of the front face, because, no, I think I made a gaffe and selected the edge on the arm. So you got to be careful and zoom in a lot here. I'm going to select all 4 edges that run off of the front of the cube, that's the body. Did I get all 4? I don't think I did this one yet. There we go. Okay. And now we just have to select 3 of the edges on the back of the cube as well. So I'm going to select this one and this one. Oops. And this one. And Control E, mark seam. And with the legs, we'll do almost the same thing. Now, if I had been smart about this, I would have done this before I duplicated the arms and legs, but that's okay. We're gonna have to zoom in for this one. In fact, I might as well save my time and just do both legs at once. If you don't get all the right seams the right time and you try unwrapping it and it looks weird, you can always fix the seams and re-unwrap it before you go into no, I'm wrong. We don't want to do those 2 edges on the inside of the legs at all. We want, come on, there we go. Nor do we want these bottom ones. We just want the ones that are coming off of the edge. So why did I do, never mind. Okay, we're going to just select the edges that come off of the front faces. So the 4 on each leg. That'll make it a lot easier for us. There we go. And we need to select 3 of these sides on the back of the legs. So we'll select maybe the outer sides and the bottom and the inner ones as well. So we'll leave the top not selected. And Control E, mark seam. So now we should have all 4 edges that come off of the front face marked as seams, as well as 3 of the edges on the back. And that makes for a nice, or at least I hope, makes for a nice seam layout so that the legs and the body and the head, at least, are all in one chunk. I might actually go in and erase some of the seams, so we'll clear some seams on the arms. So we don't need the 4 front faces on the arms. It might be a little bit tricky to select those ones. Come on. We can actually probably just select the faces. I've never actually tried that before. Control E and clear seams. That worked. What do you know? So I'll select the front face on this one as well. Control E, clear seam. And that looks like I did a pretty good job. So to unwrap the character, we'll do a save first. In fact, we might do a file save as and make an iteration. That's always a good idea. I'm going to press A to select all of the faces, and then press U to unwrap, and then select from the UV mapping unwrap. And now over here in our UV image editor window, assuming that you haven't tried rendering yet, this will lay out nicely. If you have rendered before, if you have pressed F12, You will not be able to see those faces until you press this little X down here. I got a question about that in the comment section on one of my previous videos, so just click that little X. Right now it's displaying the render result. Okay, so let's try to figure out which section is which. I'm going to press A to deselect all of the faces in the UV image editor window with my mouse in that window, of course. And now I should be able to press L, which selects an island again, and we should be able to see, actually, what we actually have to do is turn on the mode that says keep UV and edit mode match selection in sync. So this little button down here, of course, press your middle mouse button to scroll this and move your mouse to scroll this header side to side. This button right here will help you out here because with that button selected, you can now select anything that's selected in the 3D view window will be selected over here, but if you have nothing selected, nothing will be selected over here. So now I can select one of the head pieces, and so we can tell that this is the head. What I might actually do is put my mouse over the head and press L, and that'll select the entire head, and so now I can just move that to wherever I want. And we're doing this, we can actually rearrange this UV map so that the arms and legs overlap, because the arms and legs will be exactly the same. So let's go ahead and find where that arm is. I'll press A with my mouse over here and select one of the arms. That's obviously one arm. Where's the other arm? For some reason, it made them different sizes, and that's pretty strange. Let's go ahead and select the front of that one and the front of that one. Yeah, it made the two arms different sizes, which is pretty strange. Never actually seen that before. Let's go ahead and press L with our mouse over one of the arms. So we have the entire one selected, and we're going to move it over top of the other arm. In fact, we might scale this one up a little bit, but we're also going to move this one. So I'm going to move this one out of the way first, and then we'll select just this arm and move it up here just to give us some room to work. Now I'm going to box select this arm and move it over to the other one, and we'll press S to scale it up. I'm going to try to match them as closely as possible. That looks pretty good. It's not exact, but it's okay. And we will select the backs of the arms. Now what I actually should do here is I really should re-unwrap, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to select one of the edges on the top of the arms and Control E and clear that scene, because I want the arms really to be one piece. So I'm going to select all the faces again and re-unwrap. So now the arms are all one piece, hopefully. Let's check that out. There's one arm, and there's the other arm. Again, it's scaling them differently. I'm not exactly sure why. But let's grab them both over here. And I'm going to grab this one. So I'll just box select it over here. And we'll move it. And we'll scale it up so it matches as closely as possible the other one. Keeping each section as one kind of UV layout section so we don't have a separate piece for one of the sides is nice. Let's go ahead and check out where the body is. There's the body. I think it actually could be a little bit bigger than that. I'm going to scale it up a little bit because we will save space by overlapping like body parts. Now we do need to eventually fit all the pieces into the square, but we can figure that out once we've overlapped everything. I believe those are the two legs. So let's go ahead and press L. Now we can't press L over here. We have to press L over here to select a leg. And I'll move that leg down and then select this leg and move it over. Now, is it flipped? Well, what we might want to do is, with one of the legs selected, is press S and then X and then -1 and then enter. So I'll do that again. S and then X, we're going to flip it over horizontally. So S, X, -1, enter. And that just flipped it over. So you only need to do that once, by the way. Let's go ahead and grab that and move it over and scale it up. Hopefully we can get this as close as possible. I'm just pressing S to scale, of course. That looks pretty darn good to me. Let's go ahead and, let's go ahead and deselect that and then box select them both and move it up. What I might do is rotate this one 180 degrees, so R and then 180 and then enter. And so now we can fit these together nicely. Let's box select this one, move it over. Actually, I'll box select this one, move it out of the way first. Box select this one, move it over to here. Those are both of the legs. Let's go ahead and select this one, G, and move it over here. We might actually scale those down a little bit so they both fit nicely in the square. This is the head. We want the head to have lots of detail in it, although we'll be making a very pixelated texture. That's okay. Let's go ahead and rotate this one. So I'm going to press L, and then we'll press R 90, and then R 90 again. Actually, I want to draw that right way up. So let's figure out which way is the right way up. Let's go to the front view and press Z to go into solid view. We can see here that this is obviously the face right there. So if we select this face, that is the character's face. But if we select the top of the head, it's that one. So in other words, this is now upside down. That's not what I want. So I'm going to press L again to select the entire head, and we'll press R and 180. So now the head is pointing the right way up. Let's go ahead and move that down to right about there. And we can probably scale that a little bit up. Maybe like that. And now same thing with the body. If we want to figure out which way the body should be facing, we have to figure out which way it folds over. If I select the bottom of the body, it's that one, so we know that this is the front of the body, and this is the bottom, and this is the back. And the back will be upside down, but that's okay. The face is only the one that really matters in this case. So let's go ahead and box select the body and move it in. We could spend more time making this a better UV layout. I might actually select the head and scale it up because we want as much room there as possible. Okay, let's go ahead and save this. Now to export to a UV layout, I got a few questions about this as well. You actually have to have the faces selected, or at least one of the vertexes or the edges or the faces selected. So I'm going to press A to select all, and then go to UVs and export UV layout. And this will save a image to your computer. We're going to save as a PNG, which will allow for transparency, which we want. And I'm going to turn the fill opacity down to 0, and we'll leave the default size of the image to 1024 by 1024. And we can call this one, we'll call this one Blender underscore MC underscore guy underscore UV underscore layout dot PNG on my desktop. That's great. Export UV layout. And now is where we flip into GIMP. Let's go ahead and open up GIMP. If you don't have GIMP and you have Photoshop, go ahead and use Photoshop. I'm using GIMP because it's an open source free program that I'm allowed to use in a video like this. If you have Photoshop, great. If you don't have GIMP, I'll put a link to the download page in the description. I'm using a beta version of GIMP. I'm using GIMP 2.7.5. All the 2.7 versions of GIMP are betas leading up to a new version 2.8. All the I believe the current version is 2.6.12 or something like that. Let's go ahead and go File, Open, and let's go to our desktop. And we're going to open up Blender MC Guy underscore UV layout, which is a PNG file. Now that we can see it in GIMP, we can see the checkerboard, which means, of course, transparency, and we can see the edges. If you export it and you cannot see the edges, that means that you do not have the faces selected in this window, which would not be good. So we're going to create a new layer. And I believe I had a problem with this last time when I was using GIMP. Layer. Where is, because of my screen resolution for this video, Windows, I figured out after the video where it was. I'm not going to worry too much about layers in this video. Let's see if I can find it. No, I'm not sure where it is. So I'm just going to have to kind of ignore layers here. Let's go ahead and paint the character. Now the character's wearing kind of a, I can't think, whatever this color is, shirt. And he's going to, and this is his shirt, so let's go ahead and paint that in. He's wearing a darker blue, so I'll make the bottom color a darker blue pant. It's a little bit too purple, I think. There we go. So his legs will be mostly this darker blue. So these are his legs. And this bottom piece, I believe, is his bottom of his foot. So right about there, whoops, I'm using the wrong color. And I'm going to use a more solid brush. So right now the brush hardness, if I choose a different brush, that's a harder brush, there we go. His foot's going to end right about there. We don't want black, of course, we want this blue color. And I'm just going to use a fill for this. So let's go ahead and select this area and hold shift, select more areas. We might as well make that entire area blue for now. I'll use my brush and make it a bigger brush. I'm going really quickly here, and I'm not exactly sure that I'm doing everything properly, but that's okay. I might actually remove some of my selection, I think. Let's go ahead and maybe see if we can move that up to right about there for the foot. That looks pretty good. If you don't know how to use GIMP, this isn't really meant to be a tutorial for GIMP. This is meant to be a lesson for Blender. So I apologize if I'm going really fast and you don't know what's going on. We're going to make a gray color for the foot. Both feet at the same time. Why is that not working? There we go. Now I'm probably not going to get the back of the foot, but that's okay. Let's go ahead and paint the face. That's the most important part. So we're going to select a skin color, kind of a color, and get our brush and paint the face, and we'll pick a different color for the hair. I'll pick this nice blue color. I have some of these presets because I tried this before. And so the hair, I believe, it does go over part of the face. That's probably too light of a brown. And now I can do the entire head, except for possibly the bottom. And that will be skin color because that's the bottom of his head. To make my brush smaller, of course I can change that over here, but I can press the square brackets keys next to my P key on my keyboard. That will also make the brush bigger and smaller. Looks pretty good to me. Let's go ahead and draw some eyes. Now we are going to apply a filter to this to make the eyes and everything look more pixelated. But those are our eyes. Let's go ahead and make some smaller pupils. I believe the pupils in the actual game is blue, so I'll make his pupils blue. And does he have a nose? He kind of has a nose. Let's go ahead and select a darker version of the skin color, like that or so. Let's go ahead and give him a nice nose, and I believe he's got a little bit of a goatee, So let's go ahead and give him a little bit of a stubble like that. Now of course I'm drawing this really quickly, but all will be forgiven once I make it all pixelated. His shirt is of course that turquoise color. That's the word I was looking for, the aqua color. And so we're going to make the entire body that color. And of course I wouldn't have my screen at this resolution, and therefore I would be able to find the layers, and I'm using my layers properly. You could do it exactly the same in Paint, Microsoft Paint, or any paint program really. His arms do have short sleeves, and I might just paint his entire arms blue for now, or the aqua color for now, and then we might have to go in and figure out how to make that better. I'm not sure which is the top and bottom, but to make our filter work, we're gonna have to make a few variants in these colors. So I'm just going to use my paintbrush with a darker version, and just kind of maybe with a feathered brush, and maybe not so different, is make some variations in this. Same thing with the blue. I'm going to go ahead and choose my eyedropper. That's not my eyedropper. And pick a dark blue again. A little bit darker blue. And same thing with the brown in the hair, because we don't want it to be the same. I could have just used these colors. The brown in the hair will be a little bit darker in some areas. Not that dark. That's the same, so just a little bit darker. And this is where the magic is going to happen. We're going to go up to filters and noise, I believe. Let's see if I can find this really quickly. Blur, pixelate, that's what I was looking for. And pixelate will make it all Minecrafty. Now the default is 10 by 10 pixel width. So it'll turn every pixel into 10 by 10. We're going to up that to 30 and 30. So now our Minecraft character will go from looking like that to looking like that. If you don't like that, you can always adjust it. So we can go 25 by 25. It's really up to you, whatever you would prefer. I'm not sure how accurate one is in the game over another. And we'll press OK. That makes it all pixelated. I'm going to save this, as we actually have to export it in this version of Blender. So I believe instead of just going save as, we have to actually press export, and we're going to call this one layout, or maybe just uv01.png, and I'll press export and press export. And so now we have to bring this image, which is in GIMP, or we saved as a PNG, into Blender. So this is going to require a couple steps. I'm going to go back into object mode of the, actually you know what I'll do? I'll stay in edit mode. So with the entire mesh selected in edit mode in GIMP, in Blender, we will go image, open image, and we're going to find that image that we saved from GIMP that we exported to a PNG, which is GuyUV_01, and we're going to open this image. And so now, because we imported, or we opened the image in Blender while we had the UV map open, in other words, that we had the character in edit mode and with all the faces selected, it will actually overlay the image onto the character. Now to make it show up, we have to go and open up our properties window. So I'm going to, with my mouse in this area over here, I'm going to press N, and we'll find the display section, which is right here. And we have to change two things. We have to change shading under display from multi-texture to GLSL, and then check textured solid. And now it will show up. Let's go to the front view. There's our guy. Okay, obviously we made the head a little bit too, pixelated, so we might go back and fix that later on. And it looks pretty good to me. We missed the back of the feet, but that's because of my issues with GIMP. But if I press F12 right now, it doesn't show up in the render. And that's because we actually have to set up a material for the character. So let's go ahead and go back and press Tab into object mode. And we're going to set up a texture for this object. So under the materials tab, it might already have a material by default. If it does, you can just press X. We're going to start with nothing. If you have nothing, that's great. If you don't, that's fine. I'm going to press New to create a new material for this. And then we're going to switch over to the material or the textures tab, because we do need a material for the texture to be on. And we're going to make a new texture. So we'll press New. And then the texture type is not going to be clouds. It's going to be an image or movie file. And we already know that image or movie file is already brought into Blender. And so once we change it to image or movie, we can go down to the image property, and instead of pressing New or Open, we can just select this little icon and select the image that we've already brought into Blender. It already has a list of all the images that we've brought in, and those act as kind of a shortcut in Blender. So you can just select Guy UV. And one more thing, under mapping, we're going to change the coordinates from generated, which would just kind of put the image how it thinks it should go on the object, to UV. And that's going to use this UV map that we have created. So now if I press F12, you can see that the texture is on the character. Let's go ahead and fix where our camera is. So I'm going to make this area a little bit bigger and press N to get rid of that panel. Let's go ahead and view the scene through our camera. Now, if you watched one of my videos on using the camera, I believe it was 5 useful camera tips, you'll know that you can lock the camera to the view, which means that when you orbit your scene, the camera will follow along how you orbit. So you have to press 0 to go into the camera's view, and then check lock camera to view. Of course, you get that panel up with the N key, and then you can move your camera like you would orbit. Now, if you get this problem where you can't zoom in as much as you would like, there is a fix for that, and I believe it's under View, because what's happening right now is that I can't zoom in anymore. Blender has kind of said, no, you can't zoom in anymore. And that's kind of annoying, but I believe if you go to View and View Selected, if you have the guy selected, it will zoom in nicely, so now you can zoom in and out more freely. That's a little quick tip for that little problem. So now one more thing, I believe the light is on the wrong side of the character, so I'm going to move it to his front side, and now if I press F12, it renders out nicely. Now, because Minecraft is a video game, and video games kind of have baked in lighting, which means that the lighting is kind of set so it doesn't have to render out the game like we do in 3D. We want the character to be not affected by shadows as much as it is. If I press F12 to render, you'll notice that there are really dark black shadows. And that's not a very good thing. We want to be able to see the entire character or all visible sides nicely. So, to fix that, we're going to select the character mesh, not the bone, but the actual character mesh. And under the Material tab, if we scroll down to the shading section, there is a value called emit. Now, I've talked about this before. Emit is kind of like the object acting like a light source. It doesn't actually illuminate anything else in the scene unless you have certain other options turned on. But if you turn emit up, the value up to 1, the item will not have shadows cast onto it. So if I press F12, you'll see that it becomes very bright. Now, we do want some shadows to be on it, but not full dark, totally black shadows. So I'm going to turn the emit value up to 0.3, and we'll press F12 and see what that's like. And that looks pretty good. Now, my texture is not very good, but if I pose the character a little bit, so if I move the arms, and if I move the legs, into some sort of a mid-stride image or mid-stride pose, like he's walking. Let me move that arm back there and that arm like that. Maybe we can rotate his head so he's looking that way. And maybe we can make him look up a little bit. There we go. And press F12. That looks pretty good to me. Alright, I'm going to call that it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Alright, just one more thing in GIMP. I spent a few more minutes touching up my texture for the Minecraft character, and I found that pesky layers window. If you put your mouse on the right side of the screen, even past the scroll bar, you'll see your mouse cursor change to a double line with arrows. If you pull over, that's where you can discover your layers window and the other missing panels. Now the great thing about using layers in GIMP to create a texture for a character is that you can keep the UV layout export in its own layer above whatever you paint. In this case, I have two layers. I have a layer that just contains the lines from the UV layout export, and I have a layer below that that contains all of my paint. So keeping the UV layout above my paint lets me keep track of where the boundaries are for all the different faces. When I want to export, I can just hide that layer and then go to File, Export, and save as a JPEG or a PNG. That's it for now. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.